Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Q&A. Today we're joined with Mod Rock.
Hello.
Mod Tom H.
Hello.
Mod Kieran.
Hello.
Mod Ash.
Hello.
Mod Wolf.
Hello.
And myself, Mod Archie. As you can see, we're joined by, or we're not joined, but we are in our brand new setup. I don't want to say new studio, our renovated studio. It's still the same studio, it's just changed.
The door's over there now.
Yeah. So that being said, let's get on to the questions then.
I can't see Chris anymore because now, we've got this straight-edged right-angle sofa instead of the curved one.
You're like really deep in the corner as well.
Yeah, I think
And this is
we're
the
gonna
problem, you
get a
can't
new
sit in the
table.
corner of a square.
It's a lot more comfy.
We've kind of jumped into this room before it was ready, but we had to do the stream, so. All right. First one's from Runescape 392 rather. He says, last week's Motherlode Mine update to the upstairs area's veins was meant to aid the overcrowding issue there. Instead, it did the opposite and made crashing/griefing other players easier.
So you'll see that in today's update, we changed it some more. I don't know if you've checked the update thread on the forums, but previously, from last week's update, when somebody started mining the thing, it would set a timer on the vein, and no matter how many people got ore from it, how many times they all got pay dirt, that vein would stay there till the timer ran out, then it would go. Now, that could be a little annoying if somebody, being a bit of a jerk, decided to just go mine them all. They'd have to mine it enough to get some pay dirt, but if they went round, they could start a timer on all of them, and you'd see them presently despawning along the line, which wasn't ideal. So in today's update, we changed it a bit more so that when the timer runs out, the vein stays there and gives at least one more pay dirt. Now, this means that previously, before anything changed, if lots of people were mining the same vein, then it was likely to despawn really fast. And one person on their own mining one vein would probably make it go away in a good 9 seconds or so, getting only, 2, maybe 3 pay dirt. Whereas following the change, if lots of people were mining the same vein, it would just keep giving pay dirt till its timer ran out, no matter how many of them there were. This version, even slightly better, because it'll give one more pay dirt after the timer does run out. What we can do, though, is increase the timer considerably more, because, it's already longer than it would have been with just one person mining, and a lot longer than if there was lots of people spamming it to get pay dirt at once. But yeah, we can expand it a fair bit longer if you'd like a little bonus there.
Okay. Moving on to the next question then. Sick Nerd asks, can you add the option to grow snape grass in allotment patches, as picking up snape grass is not very fun?
I really like this.
Yeah, me too. So, we were looking into, I was personally looking into designing a farming expansion as a whole, and I think snape grass would be a very nice addition there. It's only 40 GP at this point, so there isn't much further down for it to go. So being able to farm it, I think, is perfectly legitimate. It's a nice way to be able to get it yourself, because the way to get it right now is picking it from the ground, from spawn points, isn't very nice. Or drops.
Of course,
and I don't think there really is many drops of it.
Other players can simply get it through the Grand Exchange or Nightmare Zone. But yeah, it would be helpful. By the way, somebody asking, how can we ask questions? Of course, we already had these questions handpicked earlier before the stream, but we're taking them during the stream, just at RuneScape with your question, and Mod Jed's grabbing them from the chat.
I can definitely read the size of font that Jed's typing in there.
Oh my word.
Saying, actually, the first one from the chat asking for a buff to the Preserve Prayer, perhaps lower drain rate.
Certainly can do.
It's easy. Pick more questions.
If the community wants it, sure. I believe it's the normal answer.
I think last time we answered this, we said we wanted to give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, some people had found that, it did help them extend their Slayer trips a little bit longer, and it was actually useful in its current state. But, if they've discovered that those things aren't good enough for them, then, yeah, we can reduce the drain rate very slightly.
Worth noting that prayer is extremely cheap, so we don't want to make it too beneficial.
It's a really cheap spell now. What is it, like 200, 250 or something?
There's not
It's not actually a spell, but yeah.
Oh, prayer. I always do that.
It needs to have a use, though, and if it's not being used very much right now, yeah.
Okay. Heisenberg says, can we see an improvement to the Skull Scepter? So he has a few ideas here. Recharge it with skull pieces up to a cap of 250 teleports. Each skull piece grants charges based on which floor it was found. The ability to autocast Crumble Undead, and giving it a +10 magic attack to match elemental staves.
I think the thing with this is, obviously, it's used for one of the diaries, I believe, and isn't it the quickest way in free-to-play to get to Edgeville?
It's Probably the quickest way to get to that area, full stop. But the thing is, getting another scepter when you've run out of it involves a fair bit of going up and down that blinking dungeon, killing things. So Heisenberg's idea of letting you save up extra pieces and put them into your scepter, that would help a lot.
And the
Another
fact
thing that's
that
been suggested is letting people trade in, well, a full scepter plus a huge pile of coins to have their next scepter not lose charges at all and become an infinite scepter.
Yeah, I think even if it's the best place to get to Edgeville, overall, the time you spend getting it, it ends up being worse. You may as well walk from elsewhere. The fact you have to spend a substantial amount of time to actually get drops and make that scepter, and to then have it run out after just a few charges is a bit rubbish. I think we could expand how many teleports it has as a whole anyway.
Is it
and
4 right
make
now?
it take a bit longer
I think it is for.
because it's a bit underpowered. 4 teleports for the amount of time it takes to get them is not good enough.
I like the idea of casting Crumble Undead with it as well. I mean, it is effectively an undead staff made out of bones of various monsters.
I'd happily have it be a reasonable weapon. It looks cool.
Give free to play a little update.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 10 says, can you give us some sort of way to have easier access to the observatory after the quest has been completed?
That bridge has been a popular subject for discussion. We'd need to have some solution whereby you didn't have some people walking across an invisible bridge that no one else could see, of course.
What I would do is, people can build it, but essentially, because it's the same level, isn't it, as below?
I'm not sure about that.
Is it not?
I can't remember. To be
But you can
honest.
walk up the hill right next to
Yeah.
Oh,
it.
in that case, it
same.
must be, yeah.
So what I would say, people can build it. You still walk under it naturally, but then you just click on it and you walk, fade out, fade in at the other side. I think that's the solution for me.
Why is it broken anyway? I mean, it didn't used to be there.
I think
Because
it's
they
the
needed a
goblins.
reason to get down. They needed a reason for the quest to
They
exist.
thought, okay, how can we get the player to have to go through this maze underneath the observatory? And they thought, with this bridge here, it's just, no, you can't do that. So then they shattered the bridge.
I mean, in RS Classic, when I did the quest, and in the early days of RS 2, that bridge, I'm pretty sure it wasn't there until the observatory quest improvement that Mod Tim worked on, at which point we got...
So
half
they
the
built
bridge.
an observatory that the only access route was the maze.
The chat, guys,
there's
the chat
a
is
lot of
speaking of
things
saying
for,
a new grapple spot.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
a nice
That's
idea.
a cool
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Chat contributed. Good job, guys.
Yay.
Well
that
done. I like the idea of that bridge being built.
What would it require?
A lot of art assets.
Okay, let's grab this other one from the chat then. Shift click to drop in Barbarian Assault to drop food / destroy things. That's a question on here somewhere. What do you think?
The shift click thing can be applied to individual items ops like it was with the salamanders that have that release option instead of drop. It could be done to the Barbarian Assault food.
I think there's just sort of, we don't want to go too crazy with the shift click and start putting it everywhere in the game.
I mean,
No,
with
and
the
that's
idea with Barber Salt is that you actually have to physically drop a lot
What
of
are we
food
talking
to
about?
Barbarian
Which
Assault.
items in particular?
When you
Crackers.
have to drop the food
For the defenders?
yeah.
But isn't that left click? That's left click drop already, isn't it?
I think it's left click to
be a bit?
place it, but it's got a right click destroy option.
And
Which begs the question why. I don't actually know the answer to that one.
There are also, the question we've got listed for later also listed stuff like the eggs and other weapons and stuff. And it's certainly doable, as is a lot of other places, but we don't want to put it everywhere just because it's doable. It kind of detracts too much.
I'll have a look at what is in Barber Salt and what might need it. In terms of applying it to new things that are not dropping, I think that's fair enough. But if there's just items that have drop not in the normal place, we'd have to apply them manually.
Well, if it's got a left click for placing it on the ground for the penance creatures to go at, then they wouldn't be interested in this. This is them trying to get a shot of it. I mean,
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with helping them do that, especially as I think we're polling for the players to be able to use keyboard shortcuts on the confirm destroy screen. That, I think, passed the poll.
I think it's probably, I'm just thinking about it a little bit more, you know, when you have a full inventory and you pull the lever and you have a lot of each different thing and you get like crackers 3 times in a row and you want to get more crackers and you have no inventory room because you're full with worms
Yeah,
and
don't-
tofu.
I did a thing for Barber Salt because testing Barber Salt is an absolute nightmare, right? You need 5 people. So I did a lot of work to make it easier for myself when I was doing some improvements there. And I made it so you can set up an account, it automatically sets all the variables, it teleports them into the room, and you can start a wave almost instantly. I made it so the defender automatically gets all the supplies in their inventory, and I think that's a reasonable reward for getting level 5 defender, to be honest.
You start the room.
You start it, and you already have an even distribution of the 3 foods items in your inventory. You could do similar with healer
And the funny
things
bit
like
was
that.
you didn't tell me about that shortcut when I started testing it last time. So I started playing with 5 accounts on my own going...
There's a big button on the rotten egg that says Bob Assault. You should have pressed it.
While we could, take the usability issues and make them go away only for people who've leveled up to the top tier, and that's in that action, we could reasonably just offer the players to improve the usability full stop.
Totally.
It's not really the gameplay getting more powerful. It's about the interface from 2006 sucking less.
Yeah, the grouping system could definitely be.
It was quite groundbreaking for 2006, and serious kudos to whoever managed to write that thing back then. But we've got a few new tricks since then.
Okay, so we've agreed we'd like to make some improvements to Barbarian Assault. We've also agreed we'd like to make improvements to a few other mini games. We've also
code
agreed
there
we'd
is
like to tackle all
gradually getting
mini-games.
better.
Well, we're not going to disagree that there's things that could be improved, but we've said, I think, that it would be nice to put together a poll full of minigame-related updates.
Okay. Moving on then. Fair Roar says, can we please get the ability to extend Smoke Devil tasks?
You've already got the Bracelet of Slaughter, which will help you do that for any Slayer task.
It's also the fact that the Smoke Devils are one of the best tasks to do in-game for XP because of the
That's probably
methods
why
that
he wants
players
to
use.
extend it.
Well, yeah.
They're very quick because you barrage them as well. So you get through how many? I assume it's the maximum amount.
This is one of
That's
those,
what it
I think it's like 200, 250. I can't remember what exactly, but...
This is one of those, people would kind of want it, but legitimately most people are like, whoa, that's a lot of experience from that task. Making those longer might be a bit of a problem.
I mean, the bracelets did a lot for
Already.
what's considered the meta for Slayer.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like to make changes like that anytime soon.
There's a lot of focus on that task already, and it doesn't need improving, I think.
Yeah.
When we've added extensions in the past, like to Myth or Dragons, it's because you've got so few of them, it ends up being a pretty bad.
I mean, we've got the Slayer quality of life poll that we'd like to put up later this month that was mentioned in the month ahead on the website. Sell out. And it's not necessarily things that can be used to increase the XP rate, but we can do things like the throwable rock hammer gargoyles that was requested quite a while ago, because if you range or mage them, you have to then run up and deal all of that.
That is kind of how hammers work, but throwable would be really nice.
And then things like you can launch a bag of salt if you're doing rock slugs from a distance as well. Just odd things like that. But things that would really improve actually doing those tasks and make some of them a little bit more enjoyable.
They're referring to a rock hammer at this point.
A useless rock hammer or just a
Right.
rock hammer?
So as far as the question goes, I think you made a valid point there. He does have a follow-up though, saying, can the thermonuclear smoke devils receive a 1 in 2k jar of smoke? Again, they can be placed in the player-owned house.
I would do something if the jar. Sorry, I had to interrupt. If the something like the jar of smoke would come in, I would make it like the abyssal dagger for abyssal demons, the smouldering stone for hellhounds, and just throw it on a completely ridiculous number, because it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to drop the jar.
Really?
Well, the thermal one or the...
Thermonuclear
thermal.
smoke devil to drop a jar of smoke.
If it's sorry,
I
that
think we're
I
talking
misunderstood.
boss jars.
Yeah, if it's the boss, then no problem. But
Graphics
The
and
funny thing
modelling.
about that is that ever since we added that POH thing, whenever players want a new jar, we've got to get the artists to make a whole new layer for the POH, otherwise it'll be inconsistent and not have one. But the thing about the layer that the thermonuclear smoke devil sits in is it has no graphics. It's a kind of brown plain cave with fog in it. And that's what you get when we had no modelling tools back in those days. We had to make what we could.
we could have
awful.
We could have questions on the poll about perhaps adding in some jars for new bosses and things like that to add more things to the topiary.
We'll have to see what else the artists are committed to for other projects, but I would like very much to fill out a few more of those.
What if the display case for when you put the smoke jar in there is just smoke and you can't see through it?
That's rather tempting. Perhaps I might be able to manage that.
Just a grey box.
Yeah, it's just a grey box. You can't see because of the smoke.
In terms of artists, we are still hiring. So do get your applications in. We've been doing some interviews. It's coming along very nicely. So maybe sometime we'll have a new artist on the sofa.
Maybe it could make the smoke alarm in your house go off, and then you get sprinklers from the ceiling, and everyone has to leave the building.
Augmented reality.
Okay. Right, we're moving on. Obsolete says, when multiple people are pickpocketing the same NPC and one of them fails, it prevents everybody from pickpocketing it for 1 tick. Can we remove this delay?
Does it?
Yes, there's an NPC delay in there.
He's kind of yelling and he's doing this animation and then he's like...
It's got an
"Okay, you
NPC
can
delay in there,
pickpocket
so it
me
can't be
again."
clicked on for a tick.
Oh, well, yeah, well, we can remove that, right?
Oh, it can be gone.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what we can do. Yeah.
If people...
That's awful.
Would that mean going through every single, or is it centralized?
Having to go and find your own world for
Okay.
pickpocketing is not
Have
nice.
you got the notepad, Kieran?
It is already on the notepad.
Fantastic.
Well ahead of you.
Cameron says, can we get an untradeable reward from completing 100 master clues so that it is consistent with the other clue tiers?
So when we first came up with this, we added like the big chest that you carry, the god spade that you carry like a god sword.
God spade.
I think that's what we originally were going to, like that Mod West called it, but then we changed it to those.
That
just
might
the
even be
giant
its config
spades.
name.
I think it might be. Then there was the wieldable clue scroll. But the one for the master clue was essentially the pet. But because it was a pet, we wanted to make it rarer and random, like all the other pets. So there is room. I think we could add something in the master clues. If anyone has a great idea for what it would be, fire it away.
A pet Yuri that isn't so rare. A small one
A little bitty one.
that you can sit on with a bowler hat.
Oh.
Okay. Get those ideas coming through then, guys.
Yeah, other ones.
Right. Next question is from Black Dragon, who says, can we remove the empty options on potions, or at least add a confirmation message?
Who uses the empty potion?
What is the
point?
Isn't it right next to drop?
Yeah.
There was one thing that came up. I tweeted about this a while ago because, yes, it is irritating. And in almost all circumstances, you never want to empty it because you would sell it and buy a vial. And that's a much better deal. The one case where people do is in PvP, where clans are dropping items for the other clan. You might pick them up and empty them so that no one else can use them. Your opponents can't use them. Legitimate. And so I wouldn't want to remove it completely if we don't want to get rid of that.
The request I got that was addressing that was to make it appear or disappear based only on whether you were in the wilderness. Unfortunately, we can't have items, options appearing and disappearing based on criteria like that at the moment.
I'd say Jed has the most experience there. Is that a problem? Is that something that happens?
Usually PVMers will empty their potions if they're getting attacked.
Okay.
Okay.
Could we
That's
add a-
oddly cheap. This is very cheap.
The confirm option becomes annoying in that scenario because you want to do it quick and out of combat.
Is that only in the wilderness then?
What we could do is make the potion fall out when the thing drops on the ground.
What if you drop the potion, it empties itself?
But they're
In the wilderness.
trying to prevent emptying from happening.
Basically,
The problem is when you're doing raids or you want to combine some potions together manually, or general PVM, and you accidentally empty it. I'm not sure there's so many circumstances of people accidentally dropping it.
Well, while the obvious thing would be to let players choose whether or not they see the option, sadly, like I mentioned, we can't have options appearing and disappearing based on that kind of criteria.
Could we
Yes.
have a confirm box option toggleable?
We could do that.
We could.
Togglescape?
Yeah.
That's kind of the only option.
It's the only option, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either that or nothing. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are saying, no, just get better at clicking. So it's an argument.
You can use shift click drop now.
Yeah.
If you want to drop it, you got shift click drop.
All right. Sharknado says, can the Rag and Bone wish list be moved to the regular quest list as it is a requirement for the quest cape? It gives a quest point, doesn't it?
It does.
But only the second part, right?
The
Both
quest
parts.
gives, I think, a quest point, but the wish list also gives you a quest point,
Right.
which is almost unique. Certainly, when we end up listing on the mini quests list, because well, why wouldn't we? It could be classed as part of the original quest, or it could be classed as a very very small quest in itself. You know, Rag and Bone 2, the longer list.
How
that
about
makes
we get
sense.
rid?
It makes
What
sense.
about getting rid of the quest point reward?
People would like it
It
going
also
back
takes
to
us back to
250, that's for
250,
sure.
yeah.
Oh, well, that's taking Tears of Guthix
Devalues
time
my
away.
non-existent
It is
quest
taking
key.
Tears of Gothic style away.
I went through. It was such a hassle going through that quest as well. It's not annoying. It's really quick. It's just hopping everywhere. And
Yeah, I don't think.
would people be upset if we removed it?
What, remove the feature altogether? Because
Not the feature. I think there's still you still get a
quest point.
reward from it.
No, I had to do it, and so will you.
Generally, the attitude I think people have.
Yeah,
I would
That's
love,
the only argument.
yeah, I would love to get rid of that quest point. I think that it should go. But, And it'll be back to 250.
If we
so people will be
don't,
happy.
does
Yeah,
that mean
then
we
I'll
never
come
want
in and
another quest
destroy
ever again?
No, no.
Or does it mean that the next quest has to give 9 quest points so that it lands on a nice round number for you?
It just seems odd that it's kind of split into 2 quests, and it's in the mini quest thing, which makes it more confusing.
It is odd. We can call it a full quest if you like. It'll just be a bit of a crap one.
Regardless, is this something that we would think we'd pull? Or just do it?
I would think something like this we could add as a question at the bottom and say, would you like us to do this, or
Yeah.
do this?
I think
Which of these
it's-
would you like us to poll?
Yeah.
Definitely worthy of a poll, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if the players feel that they'd like us to remove the 1 quest point so they're on a nice round number, then they better hope we never ever write another quest.
We just make them give it
That
all
doesn't
5
give
quest points.
10.
Right.
Or 50, depending on what's a nice round number again.
All right.
Romeo and Juliet gives like 6 or something.
Yeah, it gives
way
a
more
lot,
than it
doesn't
should, yeah.
And naff all else.
Let's just remove a point from Romeo and Juliet.
All right. Dead Scene says, can we have the ability to see how much time our target has to re-enter the wilderness in Bounty Hunter? At the moment, you can only see how much time you have until your target will vanish, or you have to get a new one.
We've just crammed that interface with quite a few things.
Yes and
Right.
no. We've crammed it, but if you look at what it's got, there's a few things about that interface that we wouldn't design that way if we were creating it now. For example, where it wants to show how much wealth you've got, it's got the word wealth written out every time, where these days we might have a small icon showing, a stack of cash or a backpack. And that way you'd save quite a lot of pixels. And also the skull icon that shows a stack of coins next to a coloured skull, that's also indicating your wealth. And it's the text that goes below it is, well, tied to which of those icons you're getting anyway. So it's not telling you very much that you wouldn't have known from the skull icon. So possibly if that weren't there, we could add a tooltip for the skull icon to indicate, this means very high, this means very low. It's not doing much else, and you could probably guess it from the picture of a small stack of coins or a big stack of coins next to your skull. So that'll save some space. Then there's the bit where it's showing the wilderness level that they're in and the combat level they've got. Again, we wouldn't normally launch an interface these days with CMB level : written on it every time. We might stick an icon in that represents your combat level, maybe something kind of sword related or stat related. And the icon off the combat side panel stone, for example.
Yep.
Stick that in, saves a lot of space where I've written and where we've got the wilderness level they're in, 1 to 4, 5 to 9 or whatever, rather than writing level, we could have just a little skull icon. At which point we've saved quite a lot of real estate. And what was it they wanted again?
Yeah, this is why we ask for pictures usually for interfaces.
They just like to see how much time their opponent has to re-enter the wilderness.
Since their opponent is outside the wilderness at that point, it's not all that pressing to know how much they're carrying potentially, so we could reuse that space. Or we could use some of the space we've just freed up to show a clock. I'm sure we can draw a small picture of a clock. It wouldn't be the first time.
So I
There's
think
nothing funny
we
about a
have
small
a few
clock.
options.
the TLDR is yes, we can do
Yes,
it.
we can do it.
I was thinking originally we could just throw it into the chat message in the chat box, because I believe you get a chat message saying you have X amount of time to return back into the wilderness. So perhaps it could say you have X amount of time to return back in the wilderness, or if you're outside in the wilderness and your opponent isn't, it could tell you your opponent has X amount of time.
We could just spam the chat box, yeah, although it's not...
If it's
people
already
complain if we
happening.
put too much in there.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
it's probably not happening to you if you're inside the wilderness waiting for them to come back.
I don't know. I just thought it would be convenient if it was filterable as
Okay,
well.
we can stick it in the chat box.
I do agree we should declare that interface, though. By
I
all
wanted
means.
to for this update since we were changing the interface anyway, but since we'd got, my changes for the emblem level and the PK skull going through, and a lot of other changes for the Dead Man beta going through, trying to do a redecoration update at the same time felt like it was just going to cause trouble. So we put it aside for now. But yeah, the translucent rectangles with bright yellow text on them is not how we normally make an overlay.
I hate working with my interface.
I'm gonna
Because
grab,
it's all one interface and you have to hide the parts you don't want and make the parts you do want appear.
I'm gonna grab this one from the chat, saying it's not really a question actually. It just says the dragon sword has lower stab than the leaf-bladed sword, which is 60 attack versus 50 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oh, and now we have
There we
plus
go.
buff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Well, the leaf-bladed sword does have its unique uses
as does
well.
the dragon sword.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to be higher than what it is, and higher than a leaf-bladed sword as well.
Of course.
Agreed. It's really not great. I mean, making it at least as strong as like the dragon longsword, maybe.
The thing is, you get your... Oh, sorry, dragon short sword are we talking?
Yeah.
Right.
Has no uses. Is the special attack, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't it deal full damage through protection prayers?
I think it's a
So
buff
it's-
in accuracy and damage.
Yeah.
Right.
Seems
so
a bit more likely.
It specs through pray melee though.
One thing to consider as well is the dragon simmer and the value of that. And since you don't need to complete the quest to use the dragon sword, if we make it too strong, it might just kind of devalue the purpose of doing my commands or the primary purpose.
Yeah.
True. We wouldn't want to make it so, if you didn't hear Ronan, we wouldn't want to make it too strong comparative to the dragon scimitar, because that's obviously locked behind a quest, whereas this isn't.
I think there is some wiggle room that we can look into.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a nice little spot between
Yeah.
the leaf-bladed sword and probably between Hasta? Is that... Because I'm thinking the only scenario you're going to want to use this is probably killing dragons. Metallic dragons.
Really?
Is that Hasta? No?
No.
No?
I
Am I
think-
way off?
Pure PKing is probably the main purpose of it, I would think. No? That's mine. For what?
Because you can't use the hashtag.
Oh, yeah, okay. If you can't wield a Hasta, I guess it's got... Yeah.
I don't know. Well, okay, well, it appears we need to do some research before continuing to explore this weapon. Okay, moving on. Where have we gone to here? Lord Gozer says, can free-to-play players have the ability to hand in a set of beads to Wizard Greyzag to receive another amulet of accuracy?
Mizgog, isn't it? Rather than Greyzag.
Sorry?
Greyzag's the one who summoned the imps to troll Mizgog. Mizgog's the one you do the quest for. Unless
Yeah.
I'm misremembering.
No, you're probably right. This
Probably.
guy's wrong.
You just got told, community.
Don't see why not.
But yes, I don't believe you can even regain that amulet at all, can you?
No, it's a very weird thing. But mind you, not many people want that amulet, but we can certainly do it again. Free to play has
free-to-play, I
a
think
use
it's-
for it. Yeah, free to play has a use for it.
Okay, easy enough. Follow-up question for free-to-play here, asking, what about adding the Zamorak robe top and bottom to the Monks of Zamorak drop table, as free-to-play has no magic leg spot?
No magic legs.
Yes. Or robe bottom.
You don't?
No,
They
just-
just, they just a blue
just use the
skirt,
blue
which
skirt.
almost looks like
Yeah.
it's magic, but it's,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
just
it's
a
just
blue
a blue
skirt.
skirt.
I don't see why not.
I think that's why its description says something about worn by women and wizards back in less politically correct times.
What drops it right now? Being silly.
The Zamorak robe bottoms.
Yeah.
The chaos things, or the...
Could we not just make them free to play so we're not adding them obtainable in free to play, but they can wear them?
You mean let them buy them off members?
Yeah, like maple logs.
Yeah. I've never really liked having that as a serious means of getting useful combat equipment. I don't mind it for cosmetics like the treasure trail stuff.
Yeah.
Maple logs was actually an oversight. They just never mapped any maple trees in the free area, but there was never any code stopping a free-to-play person chopping one. And a long, long time later, with the dungeoneering resource areas, they started revisiting some of those thoughts.
I think it's definitely something we could poll. I think it's interesting.
Okay. RuneScape 392 is back again, says, can the Dragon Harpoon's 20% increased catch rate be applied to all fishing methods if the user is wielding the harpoon? He's comparing it here to the Dragon Pickaxe and Axe, as that obviously doesn't apply to one specific tree or rock.
Yeah, but that's because you use them for everything.
Right, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
It
get
doesn't make
his
sense. Me
question.
and Wolf were discussing this before coming down here. Although it doesn't make physical sense, the fact that it then becomes apparently effectively the same as the other skills, and the most effective way to basically get XP and catch fish fast is to use the methods of barbarian fishing, which you're using literally on the edge, so it wouldn't make any difference there.
I'd be okay with the idea that you're holding a seething hot harpoon in your unprotected hand, somehow make it, singe all the mackerel that you've picked out of a net.
Yeah.
I can actually live with that in RuneScape anyway.
There was a lot of no in the chat for it.
Not the catch rate, though, I think.
I think sometimes our community is like, well, that just doesn't make sense.
Wow.
So
They have their limits for that.
yeah, maybe if there was.
So
another
what we should
method-
do is add a dragon
A
fishing rod.
dragon
Yes.
net
Yes.
and a
Yeah.
dragon lobster pot.
Yeah.
Whereas other things that RuneScapers seem okay with. we found on these cushions, they've got pictures of updates that we haven't got. And here we appear to have a panda with cotton candy coming out of its jacksie.
I believe his name is Zen.
Yes, you are correct.
He looks happy.
Wolf face.
Thank you for...
Thank you. Now I can be
Wolf face.
comfortable
Did you say
again.
wolf
So yeah,
face?
dragon rod, fly dragon rod,
Dragon
Dragon
lobster
Tinder
pot.
box.
heavy
net.
dragon rod.
Dragon Tinderbox, Dragon everything.
Let's just dragon everything, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely open to adding better versions of the other fishing tools because it's content there, and you can the fishing tools currently are 3 GP. It's nice to have a higher, more expensive version that does better.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a request for a dragon oily rod.
And other types of
Of
fishing.
all the stuff,
the
in
dragon
chat,
net.
That's the one thing you read. Okay, where are we?
There's an actual reference in the blast furnace code for a dragon toothpick and a dragon sponge.
And what for?
The developer wanted to put placeholder names on in case anyone started, decompiling the clients and looking at what the text might say.
Right. Bloody says, can we have the ability to star out our usernames as well when logging in? Would be useful for streamers not wanting to leak their username.
That'd be one for engine, but it seems a reasonable thing to want.
Okay. Rusty says, can Evil Dave get a decant option to combine doses of spice instead of potions?
I don't see why not, but it's not necessarily that hard to do on your own, especially now you've got shift-click drop to be able to get rid of all the empty ones and things like that.
The quantities are nowhere near as great as what you might be dealing with for normal potions that you've made by the 1,000 for your grinding. On the other hand, the code that for decanting in the Grand Exchange can be very easily adapted for it. Or we could, of course, let the Grand Exchange do it if he doesn't already.
That would probably be the best way of going about it, so you decant all your vialed objects,
Yeah.
or stuff like that at the same place.
It's not really the end of the world for me if Evil Dave himself started decanting all the potions as well as these things, and they just called the same code, on the grounds that no one in their right mind is going to go lugging all their potions down there for no benefit when there's a guy at the Grand Exchange who can do it more conveniently, so we wouldn't have to write anything separate.
Ash's decant code is pretty amazing.
Oh, you flatter me, sir.
It was so easy to add the raid potions to that.
Yeah, I had to do some stuff for when the Amulet of Chemistry was coming out as well for the jewellery decanter. Quite expandable.
Okay. Next question is from Bull, who says, can we get another Deadman beta? Or can they at least become a more regular event? Based on the feedback from the beta today, I don't know what you guys saw, but I saw it was overwhelmingly positive.
I was running a Reddit thread for everyone to put feedback in or bugs that they found, and there was literally 6 comments.
Right.
11 just before we came down.
Well, that was
bunch
because
of
I think
tweets
I was
saying
half of
please
them
do this
replying to it. But it was literally, the most common thing I got was, I got to miss this one. It looked fun.
Yeah.
Can I do it?
Well, it's a great clanning event. The only problem we run into with doing it too frequently is it kind of does devalue the purpose of the final hour, as well as you don't get anything from it. So you question, well, it's a one-off thing, right? But how frequently can we get away with doing this with people still showing interest? Maybe not weekly, but maybe more like a monthly event.
I wouldn't really have a big problem with it because the final hour of those tournament weeks, for a start, there's a whopping very big prize fund for that, which we are certainly not giving for these. So that might keep it special.
Right.
$10,000 should keep something special. And
But even for something like this, if we wanted to, surely we could just do like 2 weeks membership or something cool like that. So
I don't
there's
think it
some
really
benefit.
needs anything. I mean, they
seem
hop
pretty
in.
happy with it.
Yeah. So for anybody who missed it, essentially, if you took part in the beta, you would have seen that you logged in, level 119 with a tri-bird setup, a bunch of food, and you were playing Deadman mode, the final hour. And yeah, you could team up with any random person next to you. You could kill them if you please. If you die, you could just log back in and get re-geared. However, after a period of time, it was permadeath. And eventually, we would start to push you in closer to the final area, where you would eventually all kill each other, and there was one winner standing at the end. That was pretty much it.
Well,
The only change I'd really make would be when you respawn, you just get your full inventory back for the first half an hour. Because it was kind of logging out and logging in, you may lose your spot.
Right.
So if they just respawn with all their gear again,
Sure.
if they get bored, they'll log out and go away.
I'd also argue we could probably improve that setup a bit, let them choose
Yeah,
a bit more
that setup
customers.
was pulled. Was it late yesterday that we designed that?
I mean,
Basically taking from various.
I mean, the
demo
main idea
videos.
was just to see the final hour run and let people get feedback on the way that works, so that we could really make sure it works when we do the next Deadman finale on March 25th.
if they're looking for us to, make a replayable competitive thing with a prize, then we're going to have to make a much more elaborate setup. What we needed today was to know, do people understand how they're being shoved together into one space? Do they understand what the warnings mean? Is the head-up display clear? Are the different colours of shading effect understandable to the players? It was not something we'd ever launch in that state with just those items. If on the other hand we want to make it into a elaborate thing that's run every month with a prize, then we're going to have to put a lot more dev time into, letting them set themselves up, letting them letting them save their game if they log out and in again in the first half hour. That's quite a lot of save game setup.
It's
for something
not
of this
straightforward. The way we did it today was fairly hacky to make it work, and would need game update work before and after it to do it. So we would have to do something permanent.
Yeah, so we could, but that would be a fair bit of the team's time you're asking for if you want one of those.
I think one idea we had earlier, which I think would fit nicely, would be mixing it in for the community streams. So Ronan occasionally does the community streams Wednesday, 9 p.m. GMT. We could probably mix it in once every so often. Yeah.
Well, fine, he's just asking for, some days of dev work to get a decent polished version and some time from the engine team to sort out the save games every time he wants to rerun it.
Right. Okay.
If
Something
it's
to
popular,
explore.
though, we could.
All right, moving on then. Bertho says, whatever happened to the Inferno and the new Fire Cape?
So if you haven't seen today's news post, which is the month ahead from March, we mentioned the two of the big updates we want to do this year. Those are the Fossil Island and the Inferno. And we're looking to open the discussions on those both this month. And so we'll get dev blogs out this month for those, and with the potential to pull them soon as well. So if you don't know, the Inferno, it's been around about an idea for getting on for 2 years now. And we originally pulled it, but it failed on about 73%. And what we originally offered was an expansion to the fight caves, so that once you defeated Jad, you'd actually continue from there. Players didn't like that, and they wanted a fuller piece of content and more of a sequel to the fight caves. And the overwhelming piece of feedback was saying, what about that idea about the Tasakal and there? Why don't you do it there? And so that's what we're looking to offer. The Tasakal, that's similar to the Tsar race, I'd found on a volcano in Zaire, we'd do it there. And 73 is not funny, people.
I'm laughing.
So it would be a volcano found west of the Lava King area in Zaire. The Tasakal would there'd be a little settlement, a small new town, maybe a few new shops, the Tasakal creatures that you'd be able to fight in a similar way to the Tsar creatures, maybe get some new obsidian drops, maybe even obsidian armor. But in the center of this settlement would be the entrance to the Inferno, where you go through and it's a single-player, wave-based combat challenge, and you fight through all the way to the final boss at the end, with your reward being an upgraded fire cave.
Right.
That's the premise.
I think, check with Ronan, we did announce the month that would be coming on the thing, didn't we? Which is June. So just make
we've
sure
just
I
said
don't
it
want to
now if
say
we
that
didn't.
before we're allowed. But yeah, so the Inferno should be coming in June, assuming, of course, it passes the poll.
As Kieran mentioned earlier, when we initially pulled it and it failed, we were able to gather a lot of feedback from the community, which we didn't obviously get before polling it. We really figured out what you guys wanted with it, and we were able to scrap everything you didn't want. So
It does help, of course, that in 2016, when we first polled that, what we were looking for was something we can knock out in about 3 or 4 weeks in February, And that, of course, meant that it was a fairly small inferno. In fact, it was just an extra thing beyond Jad. And, you know, fine, you'd like something bigger, that's cool. We'd like to make something bigger as well. It's a lot more fun for us. And we've got more artists, etc. So, yeah, we're very happy to make a bigger one somewhere else and finally deliver that Tasakawa race that was talked about all those years ago.
Do they know where it's going to be? Have we told them?
I expect
West of
so.
Lowercase, I said.
Oh. Okay.
It's on the stream, actually.
Yeah, if I go
we were
back, I'll
thinking
watch it.
these Tasakawa that could be pickpocket targets for like
Yeah.
gem stuff. Maybe, and we could tie in some Slayer content as well. I think that was the original idea, was that
They were
the
very
Tasakawa would be
Slayer-based.
very Slayer based as a race. So we could tie something in like there and really make the settlement fit as part of there as well. And the centerpiece of their whole town would be this entrance to the volcano. I think it sounds awesome, personally.
So
I
then
think it was also, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it was also established why they have similarities to the Tsar, because it turns out one volcano race is much like another, and there was lore established and mentioned at Runefest about how they've been connected over the centuries, even if it's not something they talk about very much.
Mod Ghost wrote some fantastic story behind that. If you haven't seen it, the Runefest highlights are up on our YouTube channel. You can watch that back there. But as we said, yes, we want to do it. We're aiming for June, so look forward to that.
Get your ideas in. Because we ain't written the dev blog yet, we're still coming up with the design. So we have a lot of scope for getting in player ideas too.
Right. Moving on, Nick says, can we make the Maxcape emote cooler? He feels it's underwhelming.
I like the direction that he's given us there. Cooler.
Well, I recall when Alfie made this, he didn't have a ton of time, and we obviously didn't want to, well, we couldn't simply copy the RuneScape 3 one. So we didn't have a ton of options, but depends if the artists want to spend more time on it now.
Also worth noting that in RS3, they can do emotes that fill as much space as they like, and it renders fine. Try that in old school when it clips right through all the scenery and looks awful.
Okay.
So there's a reason some of our emotes tend to be very, very vertical, and that's because that's what we can render without it, going through the scenery, looking a bit crap. We are a bit limited in that regard.
It definitely sounds like something that we could put in another future sort of graphical improvement poll,
Right.
like similar to the one that we had sort of last month where we made changes to existing graphical stuff. I mean,
Yeah, we could do that with, by the way, the restriction that if it goes outside of its
Yeah,
one by one,
yeah, of course.
thank you.
So I
I'm
would
afraid
be
Poly
interested.
doesn't make it go away so easily.
I'd be interested in seeing what people would suggest, knowing to try and keep it in a 1x1 grid.
Right.
I'm sure that people have some ideas, but
I like
I'd
the
like
current
to see
one.
that.
I
to be
guess
honest.
it's more up to the artist's decision, really, if they have the spare time, if they want to put, say, their tap days into designing something or something. Animations like that do take a lot of their time, but we do have another artist on the way, so
Some
it's a
kind of awesome
possibility.
shower of XP would be quite cool.
Poppy Whip has asked in the chat, can I have PMod? No. Next question.
Okay. Musical Story says, can you make ghostly robes like the God Capes so we can stock up as many of them as we like?
Oh, I saw this the other day when somebody was, it was Borty actually, when he was trying to make his multiple Maxcapes.
Right.
We are talking about the Saradomin cape and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Okay, good, excellent. And it really confused me that obviously we have the check, you can't pick up an additional or buy an additional cape, but it's technically a bug. We missed out the telegrab check that you shouldn't be able to pick an extra one up. But why is that there? Like, we can get rid of that very easily.
2006, it had become the convention that, whereas you could always in Classic, drop a quest item on the ground, get another one, no one cares because they're untradeable.
Yeah.
By 2005, some of the newer developers who were trying to be a bit tidier declared that it was a bug if things did not conform to these standards. And the testers working on the team at those days decided, yep, that's how it now must be. And, a developer writing a quest at that point was expected to adhere to the standards because that's how it's done now. Not because it was helpful or beneficial. Yeah. For a long time, anti-dragon shields, this was a particularly hot topic. If you wanted more than one, you had to drop it on the floor, talk to the Duke, drop it on the floor, talk to the Duke. Yeah. And if you didn't do that during the quest, you'd never get the chance again. And that's ridiculous. For old school, of course, we've just changed it so Ozzyak's got some in his shop and you can have them after the quest to make the problem go away. But there were times when people actually tried to fix it so you could only ever get one per account, or at least one at a time per account while you're doing the quest, and thereafter you were locked out of it. But yeah, that's why that's done for the ghosty robes.
was not something we had or still do have. I know we've stopped them from keeping an untrimmed cape if they've got another 99. But that was something they could do to drop an untrimmed hit points cape, for example, in free-to-play and grab it.
We've deliberately not changed that.
Right.
And we're deliberately not changing that.
Okay.
But with the ghostly robes, which I think is what the player was interested
Yeah.
in, I got no problem whatsoever in having lots of the things.
Agree.
We might of course want to change the ghost dialogue a little bit to help you do it without having to drop the thing on the floor. And we might have to rethink what Purdue's doing, because Purdue tries to sell things back to you, and I'm not sure it would really work if you're allowed to have lots of them.
How on earth did you do that on release when they couldn't see the ghosts and had to just wander about till they found them? Or did they give you hints?
Oh, I think they do give you hints, but they're pretty vague hints. The first one you had to find by just looking around. But the place where he's wandering around is a place where you might have looked through the magic mirrors near Eblis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you might have spotted that dude wandering by, and he gives you very, very vague descriptions of where all the other ones might have gone.
Fair enough.
So, yes.
That's tricky.
Cool.
Right. Next question is from Gnomes, who says, can Neve's Dungeon receive a graphical redesign? A few questions actually this week saying, can you just completely revamp the entire dungeon? Which sounds like a bit bigger of a project.
Well, the thing about that dungeon is that we're talking like late 2013. We'd only just got a map editor at all. We were a bit more limited in what we could do. We had no modelling tools. Also, very small team. So I'd love to revisit the mapping of that. For what it's worth, the layout of it was intended that it's multi-way. You can have a cannon, but unlike in, say, the Aberrant Spectre cave in the Smoky Dungeon in Polnivnich in RS3, which is a huge thing, and one person with a cannon is occupying the whole of it all at once. Neve's cave was designed so that your cannon could be used but wouldn't hit more than 3 or 4 creatures at a time. And there'd be lots of little rooms where someone else might have a cannon in the next one. That's how it tends to be the way it is. And I suggest we actually keep that kind of style, but we could make it look a heck of a lot better than it is.
On the topic of Neve's Cave, it does come up occasionally as a hot topic of all the Slayer stuff is here.
Yeah.
And they don't often have to go elsewhere. There's been a popular suggestion that's come around a couple of times of essentially replacing it with a few dungeons around the game instead. We would keep a small dungeon there with some stuff in it, but then add something like at the western side of Relica and various other spots as well. So instead of doing a graphical rework there, we could do small graphics additions in a few other places.
In order to get them to support that, we'd have to probably guarantee there'd be a lot more spawns than you get in Neve's Cave, so that it wouldn't be, taking away a fairly convenient feature that they have become accustomed to in nearly 4 years.
That's my concern, is that obviously people are used to it. It is convenient.
Yeah.
It's tricky to change it and go the other direction.
Unless they were instanced, at which point we'd be replacing something that's convenient but limited with something that is not so convenient, but you're not going to be crowded.
But still task only.
Yeah.
How do people actually feel about that?
So that's
like
the thing, is we need to
straw poll it.
determine whether it's a vocal minority saying, yes, completely scrap it and redo it, and if there are players who simply love its convenience and have
So
become
we'd
accustomed to
we'd
it.
look at the list of creatures in Neve's Cave. We would probably keep a small dungeon there with some of them, but then add maybe 3 or 4 other small dungeons around in various locations with the creatures in there that we would make sure are better than what Neve's Cave offered.
Right.
So we could, have a survey at the bottom of the next poll that's asking which of these things would you most like us to poll for changing Neve's Cave, Steve's
Totally.
Cave, if you will. Yeah.
Jed, would you like to do a straw poll for
As
that?
I was going to say, we
Well,
haven't had a
we could do
straw poll yet.
Well, I think we should do it in-game survey is very nice as well.
Well, you get slightly more than just the people who've tuned in at the moment.
So what is this straw poll to say then?
Which of these things should we offer to do to Neve's Cave, if anything?
Okay, we'll have that in the chat for you momentarily. Moving on to the next question, then Perso says, can we please see a programming stream with Mod Ash? Yes, it will just look like a guy typing, but it will be a fun experience.
Solve it. Would we be showing?
Yeah, I
would
do
we
have
showing?
to say, when Ash is concentrating, you don't want to interrupt. So
And I don't want you to interrupt either.
No, so
Would we be
It
showing
would
the
be a
script?
fun stream. I mean,
Yes, otherwise they'd go out of their minds
Well,
just to get my face.
That's what I was thinking. Would it just be a giant face cam of these going?
We had that person for work experience, and you coded for her.
This is true. I can't imagine why she actually wants to come back after 3 hours of that. Mind you, we knocked out like a room and a half for raids during that time.
so would you rather be working on an upcoming update, or would you rather say, chat, you decide what I'm about to make, and they help design it?
I think it makes sense to be making something that's going to be launched, which means something they've voted for.
Okay.
And we're not short of those features.
It'd be nice to be able to, I think,
I'm happy to set
code
it up
something,
if
pack it,
you're
and
up
show
for
it.
I'm up for it.
Okay.
We do want to be a little careful given the amount of information shown on our screens while we're scripting.
Right.
Like you run the compiler. It doesn't just show the compiler output. It shows the full name of everybody in the company who's also doing pack jobs at that time, and some similar stuff involving our Perforce repository. So we might want to be careful how we set up the screen for it. But our full names are in a lot of cases available. Especially, ours were in that news article in PC Gamer the other week, and mine's been on YouTube for quite a while with the tracks what I wrote for Old School. So I'm not too shy about it, but there's a lot of other staff who might not expect their name to suddenly get broadcast to the world.
Right.
Maybe they've got an embarrassing middle name or something.
What was that hinting at? Who was that hinting at?
looking at Jay.
I have it all right
I was looking
there.
at camera.
My middle name's David.
Leaked the docs.
Doxed.
All right. So we've got the results for that straw poll. So which change would you like to see to Neve's Cave? 70% for make new unique caves with more spawns, 20% for expand the existing cave, and 11% saying leave it as it is.
Well, with any luck, the people who wanted to expand the existing cave,
Changes.
some of them might be okay with the unique caves with more spawns if that was the thing that got to a poll.
Yeah, I
so
think-
there's a reasonable chance this could get through. And Lord knows I'm not attached to that place.
It is obviously a fair amount of graphics time, so we'd have to look at what we've got.
Well, it depends how pretty they want it to be. I mean, they want it to look a lot better than what's there at the moment with no ground decor and just plain brown walls. But we've got a lot more wall kits than we had back then.
As I said, the poll is changing. The results are changing very actively as I'm saying that. No, it doesn't have to add up to 100. Okay. Moving on.
That's a rigged thing.
We decide the results. Penny says, will you be repolling sailing or artisan this year?
No.
Seems unlikely. I mean, if we get towards the end of the year and players seem really keen on sailing again and feel that we've done enough with the other skills to justify having another skill come along,
Yeah, I mean-
then sure, we've still got the ideas and we haven't, reused them or anything since.
Yeah,
So we'd love to.
The poll, I think, there's the potential for a poll to be later this year. As for anything of them actually coming out, even if they passed a poll this year, would be
That seems unlikely.
very unlikely because we've sort of planned out most of the big releases already.
We shall have to see what people seem interested in when we get towards the end of the year. I mean, when people vote no to something, we do generally respect that. But since a lot of the feedback was that we should be filling up the existing skills towards the top of them before looking at a new skill, and we really have done a lot of that since in 2016, and we expect to do a fair bit more in 2017. I don't think it'd be unreasonable to see if they've gotten interested in sailing again.
That's not the first time we've seen something fail a poll offered slightly different based on feedback and then pass the poll.
Technically, the Armadillo crossbow was one of those, which is weird because when we first polled it, people were worried it'd be overpowered.
Yeah.
Then the feedback was add a special attack, so we added a fairly lame special attack.
Absolutely
and they were willing to vote
useless.
for it.
But that special attack
Aha,
is
you
only
fell
used
for
for the
that
sound.
It's an awesome sound.
On the topic of bows, however,
Yeah, let's grab this one from the chat, and then we're going to see if we can quick fire through some, because I've still got some from last week. We'll get through as many as we can. So, question from the chat saying, crystal bolts, maybe even a crystal crossbow, would Fletch using seeds gives unique effects?
Crystal stuff is something that I feel we can add when we expand to other parts of Elven culture, Prifddinas, those kind of things. I think it makes sense if we ever do get around to doing something like that, that's where these kind of things would come in. I'm not really a fan of kind of taking crystal stuff and just sort of shoving it in because there's a space where it could go. I think crystal stuff's got a lot of lore behind it generally. and I think there's a lot more we can do with that.
Personally, I don't think there is a space for it, really.
I want to know if the crystal crossbow was another no ammo weapon.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was
it
thinking.
mentions crystal bolts, but it's not quite clear what's intended.
We've always, especially with raids, we were looking, well, what can we offer? Where are there gaps in weaponry and armor, etc.? We look quite frequently, and there really isn't much left for us to fill. So
Yeah, I guess like we're into making sort of more niche weapons as opposed
Yeah.
to general things. I do still think there's spaces for other weapons with a particular niche, like we did with the twisted bow, where it's strong against magic targets. You know, I think there's still definitely space for other things like that. But yeah, for me personally, I think Crystal should come with some sort of nice elf update.
It's worth keeping in mind, obviously, as well, like stats, like what would you expect it to be? And because like crystal weaponry requires agility levels as well, for the most part, well, at least the bow does as well. And that's 70 right now. Would you be really comfortable with us releasing essentially a freer, more cheap Armadyl crossbow that might degrade, but it would be relatively cheap, I'd imagine, comparatively?
Yeah.
it's fair. It's not a bad idea, but I don't know if it's the right time for it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see how many of these we can possibly get through in 3 minutes.
Can we
Yes,
do
if they
yes,
want
no? Are we doing yes, no?
Yes, no.
Yes, no.
We can try it. Rip says, while raids were a step in the right direction, can we expect to see more expansions from the herblore skill in the future? It's very expensive and really only useful for Ironmen. Yes.
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 Penny says, can elite void gloves be changed to look like the gloves of silence to match the set better?
Yes,
Yes.
if they pass poll.
Cohen says, can you fix the inconsistent cannon when shooting something larger than one tile like Lizardman Shaman? It sometimes doesn't see that there are Shamans right next to it.
We could, but you'd expect side effects that you may not want. You start tinkering with it, you're going to get different behaviour. I'm sorry, you only wanted yes or no. So yes, we can change it.
You're forgiven. Tanky says, can you make shift-click drop work in Barbarian Assault? We already covered that, sorry. Martin says, thoughts on adding banks to the wilderness?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Daniel, do you plan on to further update the Elysian to make Corp a more popular boss?
I think he just wants his Elysian to go back up.
There's a lot of people who love
Contentious.
that.
We haven't made the Elysian worse than
Yeah.
what it was.
So, no.
I would say no in that scenario.
Okay.
I've had a fair bit of support for giving it recoil effects, giving it damage bonuses, but mostly the people asking for these things seem interested in making their stack of the things more expensive rather than actually using it when they've got it.
Well, the reason why the Divine failed is because people thought it was overpowered. And if we start to push the Elysian towards how powerful the Divine was, it doesn't make much sense.
It might have use in the future.
Yeah,
Who knows?
safe to say. Nat says, would you consider offering shift-click to withdraw X in the bank? So shift-click would immediately pull whatever your withdraw X was.
The engine feature that was created for shift drop only works on objects options in your inventory. If the engine team could give us something a little bit more flexible that could work on other interfaces, then we could use it on that interface if players are up for it.
I'd love that personally. Hess says, can we see more cactus patches added around the desert?
Yes, I want that. Preferably in places with interesting requirements, perhaps like a rooftop in Polnivnich with an agility requirement.
You've thought about this.
Yeah, I had a player discuss it with me on social media the other day.
I'd probably tie it in with the thing we talked about earlier as well, with the growing snape grass and also maybe some other similar.
I thought cactuses grew out of Chris's head.
That's an old meme, Karen. You should be ashamed.
Stale meme.
We've moved on.
It's not stale, it's a week old.
That's what he said about
That's
his
an
house,
old
I'm
meme.
sure.
All right. Let's just tackle this last one here. So this was a popular question on Reddit this week, saying, can the old school team please clarify the rules around using a touchscreen to play old school? I spoke to Mod Weth, and I have a few notes. If I can find them. Here we go. It says, touchscreens are fine. Normal play won't trigger detection, but extreme skilling may trigger as unusual play. False positives like those are incredibly rare, like 1 in a million, and we always find them. All player bans are reviewed daily to ensure accuracy, but there are a lot, so sometimes takes a little bit longer to get through them all. There you have it. Certainly extreme means the example showed on Reddit. Moving on, I think there's one with an image. Yeah? Are we good to show that? Cool.
Can we
So,
see it?
a suggestion. We can't see it, actually.
It's the one I sent you yesterday, I think.
Oh, that one.
This
Yeah.
is helpful for us.
Imagine a nicer looking Achievement Diaries UI. That's
Oh,
what
I
he's
see
asking
this.
for.
Yeah.
It
Well,
looks
if I
so
lean a
nice.
little bit,
doesn't
I
it?
think
Just
I can.
close your eyes.
In about 10 seconds.
I really wanted to do this. I prodded Modash about it, asking how difficult it would be. And it would take a bit of time, you mentioned?
For the simplest form, not a huge amount of time. For a more elaborate thing, like I was suggested on social media last year, which, by the way, we really did like, that would take a fair bit more time, which is why we didn't just go and do it. But yeah, the simple thing that the player pitched could be done, and we presumably want some kind of toggle on that, of course, which is fine. It could have a toggle.
Okay. I saw one no in the chat. Missed his name, but
Oh, we're not
Oh,
doing it
can't do
now.
it then.
Yeah, it's over.
beautiful. Well, that is going to conclude this week's Q&A then. Again, some questions to save for next week, but overall, a solid time. The Deadman beta is over now, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
That world has gone back to being a normal world, so you can play on it normally.
Fantastic.
Normal.
Apart from that, you had several other nice quality of life updates this week, so go ahead and enjoy those. Aside from that, guys, well, thank you for watching. We'll catch you next week.
So,
Right.